Christopher. We gather for worship, readings, meditation, music, images. We gather, though at a distance from one another. Whether near or far, we gather in spirit during these times of concern and even anxiety and fear. We gather in spirit for spiritual nourishment. May we feel, even at a distance, our mutual care and concern, our love for one another, for all beings, no matter the distance that separates us physically. We are close spiritually in the heart. We are always, after all, connected, always connected, our interwoven lives, never unwoven. So during this shared time of virtual worship, may those who need comfort find comfort. May those who need inspiration receive inspiration. May those who need to feel the love, now and always. May it be so. And may the flame of our chalice, symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith, flame of truth, of freedom, of community and love, the flame which I am about to light, may the flame remind us of all that we share, whether we are side by side in a pew or in distant cities.
Good morning. On behalf of the Board of Trustees, welcome to worship from Old Ship, the home of our First Parish in Hingham Unitarian Universalist. Wherever you are, however near or far, you are warmly welcome to this virtual circle of care and compassion, most especially during this time of our shared concern amidst the healthcare crisis we all face together. Welcome.
Time of meditation, prayer, and silence. May not have as long a silence as usual virtually, but I'm told you can hit the pause button if you'd like to pause for a longer period of time to center and find your deepest centering place in your heart. So wherever you are, whenever you're viewing this service, I invite you to pause, to slow down, to breathe into full presence, body, mind, and spirit. It is from this deeper presence that the deeper yearnings of our hearts arise. Yearnings of our hearts, another name for prayer. Yearnings of our hearts for each of us in the midst of this time we share. Yearnings of our hearts, prayers, especially for those who have fallen ill, for those who fear for their loved ones. Yearnings of our hearts for those whose livelihoods are at risk, those living already from one paycheck to the next, those without adequate health insurance. Yearnings of our hearts, prayers for our leaders. May they have the wisdom and knowledge to help us all through these days of concern. And as always, as the world continues to spin, we hold in our hearts those who are hungry. May they be fed. Those who are without a home, may they have shelter. Those who are caught in the crossfire of violence, may they know peace. May we all know peace. And as we enter our time of silent meditation and prayer, I will light all our candles for the joys, sorrows, the deep concerns felt among all those viewing our service, and for those, wherever they may be, facing the challenges of these days, challenges of their lives. We reach out, if not with our hands, surely with our hearts, as we pause in silence. We have two readings to be shared this morning with many thanks to Ginny Perelson for the first reading and then Roy Harris for the second. Well, Ginny.
From Paul's letter to the Corinthians, this passage familiar to many of you. If I speak in human and angel tongues, but have not love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but have not love, I am nothing. If I give away all I have, and if I deliver my body to be burned, but have not love, I gain nothing. Love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful. It is not arrogant or rude. Love does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrong, but rejoices in the right. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. As for prophecies, they will pass away, and as for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will pass away. For our knowledge is imperfect, and our prophecy is imperfect. But when the perfect comes, the imperfect will pass away. So faith, hope, love abide, these three. But the greatest of these is love.
Our second reading is We Need One Another by George Odell. We need one another when we mourn and would be comforted. We need one another when we are in trouble and afraid. We need one another when we are in despair, in temptation, and need to be recalled to our best selves again. We need one another when we would accomplish some great purpose and cannot do it alone. We need one another in the hour of success, when we look for someone to share our triumphs. We need one another in the hour of defeat, when with encouragement we might endure and stand again. All our lives we are in need, and others are in need of us. Here ends the reading.
Christopher, tell us what were we listening to? What were you singing?
That song was I Know I Can by Jenny Gagne and Mark Foyt.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Great. I want to thank everybody who's helped with this service. Christopher to begin with on the music, Roy and Ginny, the readings, Brian, you're welcome. Later on, Eric, who's going to help sing a song, and Susan Carrillo, who is not visible, but who has managed the technology this morning. If anything goes wrong with it, it's because of something I did, not something she has done. Thank you, Susan. So I have a few words I'd like to share about the readings we've heard and situation in which we find ourselves. First, a little about Paul's letter to the Corinthians. A lot of you are familiar with it, whether directly from Scripture or because you've heard it read at a wedding. Paul was not writing to a couple about to be married. He wasn't writing about romantic love. He was writing about love in its broadest sense. He was writing to a community in Corinth, letter to the Corinthians. Almost 2,000 years ago, these little communities were trying to figure out what it meant to be Christian. What is this new thing, Christian? They did know this. They knew they were supposed to be loving. They were supposed to love each other. Well, Paul was writing to this community because apparently, or he wouldn't have had to write the letter, apparently they weren't doing so well at it. So he had to write the letter. And we've all had that experience, perhaps, or many of us received a letter from an aunt or an uncle or a parent or written such a letter. And the letter itself can tell you what's going on. Well, this is true for Paul. What was his advice about love? Remember, not romantic love, though it would apply there too, but he was writing to a community. How are we meant to be loving in community? With friends, neighbors, with everyone. Well, one of the first things he said was, love is patient and love is kind. I like to imagine the people of Corinth hearing this or reading it and thinking to themselves, oh, maybe we haven't always been so patient with each other, and maybe we have failed sometimes to be kind to one another. Of course, Paul went on, said, love is not jealous or boastful. Oh, goodness, maybe we've failed at that sometimes, they might think. Love does not insist on its own way. Of course, none of us have never insisted on our own way, have we? We know how that can be. And Paul was calling the people of Corinth to account for it. Love isn't arrogant or rude. And here they're thinking, yeah, I was rude just the other day. So they're being called to their better selves. It's not that Paul expects anyone to be perfect in spite of his use of the word later on. He's calling to the people of Corinth and now to us all these years later, saying, work together, help each other out, do your best. Be understanding and be forgiving, all the rest. So as I'm saying, I expect it goes without saying that maybe all of us, not just these days, but all the time, need some of these reminders. Judy Woodruff, the news anchor on the PBS NewsHour, at the end of her broadcast on Friday, offered what she called a personal message. It was very brief. She acknowledged the times in which we're living, and she called us to our better selves, inviting us not just to think of ourselves, though of course we always think of ourselves, the well-being of our families, that's quite natural and human, but she was inviting us to also think of our neighbors in need at this time, whether nearby actual neighbors or neighbors anywhere, and suggested maybe we should do better to share a little food rather than hoarding food, for example. Now this brings me to George Odell's reading, We Are Always in Need. I think in our American culture of often hyper-individualism, and there's a lot to be said for individualism, for learning how to do things for yourself, for accomplishment, and so on, but it can get carried to an extreme, as we all know. I expect that for many Americans, many of us, it's not always easy to think of ourselves, as George Odell suggested, that we are always in need. From the beginning to the end of our life, in one way or another, always in need. Now it's quite clear how many are in need. The moment we're living in reminds us of this pretty clearly. We do need each other. We depend on each other. Certainly the physicians, the healthcare workers among us, but we depend on each other in so many ways. And we can help each other. It may be as simple as a phone call to a neighbor who has been self-isolating or been asked to quarantine, or we may worry that they don't have enough in their pantry, or to a friend or a fellow parishioner, just simple asking, how are you doing? I was thinking of you today. Is there anything you need, anything I can do for you? There are so many ways to help, to be of use. I've been thinking in this regard of a story from 9/11 that my colleague, Reverend Rebecca Parker, who was president of my seminary, Star King School for the Ministry in Berkeley, she was president there at the time, and she tells this story about that morning, that terrible morning. Of course, in Berkeley, the time changed, they were waking up to it, and she went to the office, was looking everywhere for one of her office colleagues, couldn't find him anywhere in the building, finally went to the kitchen, and there he was. He was making a big pot of soup. He was thinking, today people might appreciate sharing a bowl of soup. There are so many ways to help. We can each find our way, sometimes quite simple, seemingly insignificant, but never insignificant. For it all adds up to a stronger, more compassionate, kind, and loving community, the kind of community Paul was helping the Corinthians and others to attain. And we need that always, certainly now. Now, as we know, handshakes are out, hugs are out these days, not among the ways that we are to offer a friendly gesture or greeting. Instead, it's the elbow bump, or for the adventurous, the foot bump. Haven't tried that yet myself. All this is kind of fun, but I'm partial to the namaste bow. The divine within me bows to the divine within you. I'm imagining lots of you bowing right now. We can translate that, if we like, the best in me bows to the best in you. Or using a word that Walt Whitman coined, which I like a lot, the lovingest in me bows to the lovingest in you. And at this time, we're learning more deeply to experience the friendly, loving connection virtually, whatever distance. We've known this for a while. Photos of a grandchild or niece or nephew or a friend or a friend's dog or a friend's cat sent, texted or emailed, or just a simple, how are you doing, maybe with the response of an emoji, a thumbs up, or fingers crossed if it's a challenging situation, or a smiley face, or a heart. Not a replacement for actual hugs and kisses, but actually not bad, and particularly important now. So here we've been in what we're calling virtual worship this morning, or whenever you are watching or rewatching, if you choose to do that, virtual worship. I invite you once again to know that you are among, whether it's a dozen or dozens or however many, Old Ship, First Parish in Hingham, friends, members, neighbors, relations, that you're connected. We are all connected through these words, the music, the images. We are all connected. It's an exercise this morning that might help remind us that it is always so, not just in the midst of a crisis of one kind or another, but always. We are always connected, whether side by side, in the same room, or at a great distance. We are always connected. So though we are keeping social distance physically for the health and well-being of ourselves and for others, our neighbors, our families, and so on, we can at the same time find ways to be ever closer spiritually. In this spirit, I close these remarks with a lovely poem. I think a number of you have been sending it to me. Many have seen it. It was written by one of my colleagues, Reverend Lynn Unger. She titled it just a few days ago, Pandemic. What if you thought of it, she writes, as the Jews consider the Sabbath the most sacred of times. Cease from travel, cease from buying and selling. Give up, just for now, on trying to make the world different than it is. Just for now. Sing, pray. Touch only those to whom you commit your life. Center down. And when your body has become still, reach out with your heart. Know that we are connected in ways that are terrifying and beautiful. You could hardly deny it now. Know that our lives are in one another's hands. Reach out your heart. Do not reach out your hands. Reach out your words. Reach out all the tendrils of compassion that move invisibly where we cannot touch. Promise this world your love, for better or for worse, in sickness and in health, so long as we all shall live. Promise this world your love. May it be so. We're going to draw our virtual worship towards a conclusion with a song. You can sing along if you want, virtually at a distance. It's Pete Seeger's rendition of the words from Ecclesiastes, turn, turn, turn. And we chose it and chose to sing it as a reminder that what we're living through now will not go on forever. We will do our best to ameliorate everything that's going on, to keep ourselves as healthy and well as possible. There's a season. To everything there is a season. And so may this be a song of hope. Turn, turn, turn. Eric, if you join me.
In the interdependent web of existence of which we are a part.
Yes, indeed.
There is a season, turn. and a time for every purpose under heaven.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Christopher. May we, aware of whatever measures of blessings of this life are ours, may we turn and make of our lives a blessing to all life. Be well, be safe, take care of one another. May this always be so. Blessed be, and amen. And as I extinguish our lights of love, may we know that our lights shine wherever we go. May our lights shine. Amen, and blessed be. Peace be with you all. God bless.